got a child with Down syndrome.
Yes?
So I wondered on this aspect, you know, I couldn't sit here and understand what you were saying. So for his soul, how does this work? How does he learn? I mean, to me, actually, with his being, he's been very much in touch with God's love, you know, because he's always pretty true to himself, really, apart from what maybe I and other things learn and put on him, but he generally seems to have the ability to stay more in touch with his truth than I do. So I just wondered if things like that, how it works.
Sure. Rita, where are you? She was there, was she? No, she was sitting there. Rita also has a child with Down syndrome, so, and has asked exactly the same question. And the reality is that Down syndrome is created by emotions of guilt inside of one or both parents. Okay. What gender is your child?
Boy.
Boy. So this has to be emotions of guilt or shame associated with the male affected by
his father.
So it's in both of you, not just in not just in one parent, but there are combined emotions of guilt and shame associated. And guilt is the primary modification of the genetic code shortly after conception that results in a Down syndrome child.
I've had loads of guilt.
Yes. So, and you know, guilt is a very popular emotion, of course, but we have to have it to a certain intensity before it begins to modify the genetic code. Does that make sense? So the guilt inside of yourself and your husband must be quite high for that to occur. Now, the key is to not blame yourself, because your guilt came from your own childhood and your own experience, and the key is to work your way through it. The truth is that all genetic problems can be cured.
That's my feeling,
all genetic problems. But to do so, to cure it, we have to get into a state of at-one with God to actually cure a genetic problem. A person needs to be
his father is not around, so I have no, influence on that part of the cause.
Yes.
I'm only on my own, so.
Yes.
I just wondered, without his father being conscious of these things, how does that work for them?
Well, what I'm saying is, if you listen to what I was saying that actually the genetic code can be cured, not by you processing emotion, but by someone becoming at one with God eventually. So for example, if you became at one with God, you could cure your own child. Yeah, of their genetic deformity in the genetic code. And the reality is also, though, that because of the guilt, spirits attached to your child while he was in the womb, right? And they actually impeded the development of the genetics of the child in such a way to deform it and affect the chromosomal construction. As a result of that, we call it Down syndrome. Yeah? And that all can be reversed. Firstly, we can help our child be removed from its spirit influence by addressing our own feelings of guilt and shame about our life, so we can release all of that. That actually releases the spirit influence on the child, because whatever the parent does has an effect on the spirit influence on the child. Once we've released that, and then if we continue to progress and become at one with God, we can now cure our child completely. Or if someone becomes at one with God before you, they can do that. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Have you seen that done, AJ? Have you witnessed that in your life?
In the first century, while I was on earth, yes. Yep. Yep. And there has not been anyone on earth who's been at one with God since. And so there's been no one who's been able to actually cure something like Down syndrome, which is actually a genetic issue.